Well, the visual style of the film was informed by the approach of the story, which was I wanted the audience to feel like they were inside the movie experiencing it rather than sort of sitting there watching a film. So once that idea was swirling in my head, then the question was, how do I visualize that? And I knew very quickly I had to use a camera in a subjective way. So it was just as a subjective camera, staging scenes in a very intimate way, and that juxtaposed with, at times, giving the film the scope and the scale that I thought was appropriate. And then when it was necessary to sort of squeeze inside the movie and just live and breathe with the intimacy of the characters, that was used with a subjective camera. So at times it may have felt claustrophobic, and at times maybe disorienting, but that's what life is.
Yeah, I'm actually more enthusiastic now about the work, I think, than I've ever been. I like so many actors, I fell into this. It was never something that was crafted for me. I didn't come from an incredibly, the family I grew up in, while I love them all dearly, it wasn't a very cultured environment. There wasn't much importance placed on history even, or the arts. And I played football, soccer, until I was about 15 or 16, and that kind of was felt to be a very important part of my life. And then I fell, as I said, like so many actors, I fell into acting, and I found that basic acting provided me a platform for an inherent curiosity that I had as a human being, just as to why we all act the way we do, and what is the purpose of life, if indeed there is a purpose. And somewhere through the journey that I've had over the last 10 years, that curiosity, that original impetus to keep going, that question that remained unanswered, kind of disappeared. I lost it beyond the horizon of my own good fortune. And I feel in the last 2.5 or 3 years that curiosity has been reignited, I suppose. I love it. I mean, I really, truly love doing what I do, and I find it very humbling, and I find that it creates in me a great love for the potential of humanity, and also a great disgust at the things that we do for each other. And cinema is nothing if not a reflection of our faults and our greatest hopes and our greatest ideals, you know. And I think some of those themes are again, very inherent in Pride and Glory.
I remember. My father was a New York City police officer. I grew up in that culture as a child. What I think was always fascinating to me as a kid with my father, my dad was, I guess, what would be considered an unorthodox cop. He would be in a squad car playing his guitar in the back seat, and his partner would be writing poetry, this guy named Frank Keating. They were partners for 11 years. He was obsessed with James Joyce. He loved Thomas Jefferson. I remember as a boy, he gave me a copy of the Portrait of the Artist as a young man. He said, "You must read this." So this was not going on in the police department. It was very uncommon. They were, surrounding my father were the more traditional kind of New York City cops. And I absorbed a lot of the stories around the dinner table and barbecues and things like that were just embedded in my brain. And there was just I guess there's sort of a social factor in regard to the behavior of these guys. And that was always in my world. So when I set out to write the script, I just had a lot of ideas swirling inside of my head, which I walked Joe through. But also, there was a lot of things going on in the world post 9/11, because as I think you mentioned about the incident of 9/11, what started out initially was to tell a very specific story after 9/11. You know, I mean, I'm from New York. I lost a lot of friends that day. Everything just changed after that. And we all know how much it's changed. Just, you know, just leaving the country now, what's going on in the elections and everything over there. But what started to infiltrate the script was the idea of institutional corruption. Because that was sort of, we had discussed it early, but it became such a part of the landscape of our country after 9/11. the colliding sort of entity. There was a lot of corporate malfeasance going on with Enron and things like that. The Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo, the administration. For me, these were all corrupt institutions that I observed. And growing up in New York, we always heard that the police department it was called the Blue Wall of Silence. That's what we always heard, the Blue Wall of Silence. You could not penetrate that institution. So I was dealing with an institution that I understood very well because I grew up with it, and I used that institution symbolically, or as in a way a metaphor, to explore what else was going on in the world that I thought was very relevant, and used my personal understanding of an institution that touched my life to explore the institutions that were affecting not only our country but the world. And that was sort of the approach to the movie. So when I brought Colin on, and Edward and all the other actors, we would sit in my apartment and have lengthy conversations about, we didn't talk about cops necessarily, we talked about the world. And that was what began to inform the material. And then these guys would go out and hang out with cops and go on ride-alongs and drug busts and buy-in busts and investigations. And then they would come back. I called it method filmmaking, where the actors would go out and we would just be out in the street doing our thing, and then we would all come back together and apply all that and put it back into the script.
Yeah, no steadfast code of honor or nothing that I have crafted through the years that I could say are the 10 commandments of my own life. But of course, there are, you carry yourself as a human being, not as an actor. That's as a human being first and foremost, with as much integrity, I think we all do, and you treat people with as much respect as possible. That simple and kind of twee notion that just that, you treat people with respect. I remember there's few things I agreed with that were spoken at me as a child. I remember things like little children should be seen and not heard, which of course is a travesty of an idea, and don't speak unless you're spoken to, which of course is another horrendous thought. But one of the things that did stay with me that I think has an incredible validation, maybe now more than ever, is treat people as you wish to be treated. Something as simple as that would be about as close to a code of honor as I would have.